Welcome to Batya on NewsNation. I'm Batya Ungar-Sargon, and we have a great show for you today. Glenn Beck joins us to talk about how patriotism is back. We'll discuss the Texas Senate race and how it explains everything that's wrong with our politics. We'll also talk about Republicans dragging Bill and Hillary Clinton into hearings to talk about Jeffrey Epstein, because that story has become a political football. But we begin with what we learned about America this week. Patriotism came roaring back onto the national stage when the men's Olympic hockey team brought home the gold in a game we haven't won in 46 years. The country was filled with a sense of national pride and optimism as the victory sunk in, uniting us despite the divisiveness of our era. It's the vibe shift we needed. Patriotism is back, baby. It's hot, it's cool again, and it is in the club. The team spent their first night back on U.S. soil leading a Miami nightclub in the Star-Spangled Banner and what had become their trademark wholesome revelry. In every interview I've seen, the hockey gold medalists spoke of their love of country. They praised each other profusely, but they also took pains repeatedly to praise the women's hockey team.
I'm so proud and I'm so happy that the men's and women's USA hockey teams brought gold medals back to the United States of America.
It's masculinity without any nasty machismo, exactly the kind of role models young men need today. For so long, the left controlled the culture and told us that masculinity is toxic, that patriotism is racist, that working hard and pushing yourself to excel at something that requires physicality rather than a college degree is for losers. The iconic image of Jack Hughes draped in the American flag, minus 3 of his teeth that he lost for the glory of his country, is the repudiation of all of that, the proof that we're in a new era where hard work, love of country, and masculinity are once again virtues to strive for. There was something deeply nostalgic about that image. It evoked the emotions of a more innocent time, a more unified time. What if we could be that nation again, a nation whose enemies were other countries, not each other? Naturally, the left said no. For daring to unify the country, the liberal media had to tear the hockey team down a notch, especially after President Trump invited them to the State of the Union speech and the team visited with the president at the White House. The media, led by the New York Times, accused the boys of failing to meet the moment and losing the room. Apparently, if your president invites you to the White House, you're supposed to say no to please the New York Times. But the hockey team didn't see it as political. They saw it as honoring their country. Ignore the leftist media. The boys are right. And in embodying the nostalgia of a more innocent time, they gave the nation a jolt, a vision of what we were and what we can be again, one nation under God. With me now to discuss is Glenn Beck, co-founder of Blaze Media and Torch, and nationally syndicated radio host of the Glenn Beck program. Welcome back to the show, Glenn. Thank you so much for being here. So do you agree with me? Was this the week that patriotism really conquered the nation again?
So I think yes and no. This is the week that patriotism came roaring back. Donald Trump was just brilliant in the way he structured the State of the Union. But also patriotism came back because it's been since 1981 with the hockey, as you mentioned. But on the flip side, it is also the week that anti-Americanism was clearly on display. You know, when you have the hockey team introduced and you have Rashida Tlaib, while everyone is saying USA, USA, she's chanting KKK. It was so clear where everyone stood on their belief in America. It was, I've never seen anything like it. I haven't seen patriotism like that in a State of the Union since Ronald Reagan. And I have not seen anti-Americanism like I saw from the State of the Union ever in my life.
That is so well put. To me, it seems like this is very much that the nation was unified around this in terms of the people, the electorate, people who vote for Democrats, people who vote for Republicans were celebrating with these guys. Yeah. And it was the Democrats and then even more so the media, the liberal media, that felt this crazy need to tear them down. I want to show you something. This is from the same vertical in the New York Times, The Athletic, their sports vertical. Let's first look at how they covered Eileen Gu, a traitor who was born here and yet chose to compete for our greatest adversary, China. Let's look at how the New York Times talks about Eileen Gu. The scientist, politician, skier, model, and student is like a magician, the audience dazzled by her mastery, but somewhat irked by how she does it. Okay, this is how they represent a traitor who is representing our greatest adversary. Now I want you to look at how the same outlet covered our heroes, the boys who competed for us and brought home the gold. It's nice to be feted as a winner, as the U.S. men's Olympic hockey team has been, but who's celebrating you and why they're doing it matters more. Glenn, what do you make of this juxtaposition?
Well, first of all, they call the Olympic skier they call her a magician. I think the press is the biggest magician. Look over here while I'm stabbing country in the back. So misdirection, they're very good at that. You know, what I find really sad about this is the fact that, and this is par for the course, that politics have destroyed everything. And it did not destroy with the average American, both Democrat and Republican. But the press, the politicos, those who just cannot see the truth anymore. America was celebrating, and the press just kept dragging it back to politics in such an unnecessary way. You know, this is the problem, I think, that the left has, and they have. I mean, this was the worst brand destruction I have seen since the introduction of New Coke. This was just destructive to the brand of the Democrat. But you know, as you're watching this, it's one thing to disagree. It's another to sit there in your home and go, wait a minute, KKK USA. What is that? You know, it's the government's job to defend the U.S. citizen, not the illegal citizen. Wait a minute, what are they? They're not standing for that? I think this has been a bad branding week, the worst ever for the Democrats, and it's going to get worse for them. But I think it is waking up some Democrats that just thought, oh, they're just like me. They love the country. No, they turned a corner a long time ago, and you didn't see that corner, and now you're starting to see it on display.
Yeah, the president definitely tried to brand the State of the Union with the glory and the patriotism of the hockey team. He does have a bit of a big lift leading into the midterms. There's something on that people are calling a vibe session, which is when the economy is actually doing really well. Working class people and middle class people are actually seeing wage increases, but the public's feeling about the economy is that it's in the toilet. Public sentiment is not reflecting the reality on the ground. Now, Joe Biden lost the election because he kept lecturing voters about how good the economy was and they weren't buying it. How does the president get over that contradiction or resolve that contradiction in a way that's favorable for his party going into the midterms?
I don't think he does by talking. Because he'll run into the same problem. The thing that I think, and I could be wrong on this, but in trying to understand the American people and how they are viewing the economy, it is hard to believe that the economy is doing well when my wife and I go through, the drive-through, and it's $40 for the two of us, and we didn't order that much. That is shocking when you hit that. Every week. I think every time I go through a drive-through, I think, how does the average American make it with that? As you got the kids in the back, you're not going to do that. I mean, and if you are, where are you getting the money for it? So that's a problem that is a constant reminder. And then the second thing is the feeling that everything is unstable, and it is unstable. And it's no fault of his, but he's got, and I think the Fed will help if he can get the Fed under control. If he can bring down the price of houses, which is another reason why the Democrats do not want these people going away. You can't add 15 to 25 million people to your society and expect housing prices not to go up. I mean, it's just insane. But if he can bring down the housing prices and give the feeling of stability, people I know are still walking around going, yeah, it's good. It looks like it's getting better, but is it going to last? That's going to be a hard one. That he's got to give that confidence that, yes, it is going to last, and it's coming to Main Street, not just Wall Street. He did a great job in saying, check your 401k. I remember in 2008, I told people, get out. This is 2006 and 7. Get out of the stock market where a big crash is coming. And people called me up afterwards and they said, Glenn, thank God you saved me thousands of dollars. And then I kept hearing people say, you know how much money I lost? I keep checking my 401k. Now would be a good time for people to check their 401k because you've made a crap load of money recently in your 401k. And he did highlight that instead of just saying Wall Street's doing well. Nobody cares about Wall Street. I do care about my 401k.
Can't let you go without asking you about, I think, one of the biggest conundrums on foreign policy right now, something I truly don't know the answer to, Iran. The president won very much on a promise of no new wars. He's very committed to not getting us entangled in one of these Middle Eastern quagmires. At the same time, they do seem to be anxious, at least to give the impression that they're not willing to give up their nuclear capabilities. This whole question is now being posed as, a very urgent one. The president has to decide what to do. Of course, they've killed tens of thousands of protesters. What would you advise the president to do on Iran right now?
Boy, I would not advise. I'd say talk to somebody else, Mr. President. I've thought about this an awful lot. I would advise any other president, stay out of it. Stay out of it. However, this president and his team at the Pentagon has done remarkable things. I mean, and with what happened in Venezuela, if Venezuela was because we do have new tech that nobody knows about, I mean, that was a remarkable feat in Venezuela. If he knows we have tech like that, and he knows something we don't know, this team could go in and actually pull something off quickly, and it could happen not in a night, but it could happen in a couple of weeks. And I know with General Raisin Kane, that's the kind of stuff he specializes in. I know the president knows if this is drawn out, I'm dead come the next election. We're just dead. So he takes that seriously, and he also despises war. He despises war. So I got to give him the benefit of the doubt that he knows something that I don't know. If it were any other president, I would say, do not make a move. Do not make a move. But his record on military strikes is the best I've ever seen from including Eisenhower, from any president. He just knocks it out of the park. Hopefully he does this time too, but I fear we are going to see action soon.
Glenn Beck, God bless and protect you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. God bless you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too. Democrats are facing backlash for their decorum during Trump's State of the Union address. But how is that playing out for voters? That's next. The president delivered the longest State of the Union speech in recorded history this week. The guests included two people you've met on this show, Marcus Coleman and his daughter Delilah, who sustained horrific injuries when an illegal migrant driving an 18-wheeler plowed into the car she was in. Other guests were military heroes, young and very old, who the president awarded medals to. The whole speech was designed to force the Democrats to sit on their hands while people viewed as heroes or victims were applauded by Republicans. One such moment was especially poignant and is sure to appear in campaign ads in the coming months and even years. It was this one.
If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
Here with us now is Jose Aristimuño, former Deputy National Press Secretary for the Democratic National Committee, former Obama administration official, and CEO of Now Strategies and VIP Media. Jose, thank you so much for being here. So what grade would you give to the Democrats' performance at the State of the Union?
I would give them a C, and I would say I would have wished that they actually attended the State of the Union, a majority of them. Anyways, now I would say the Republicans, I give them a D, closer to an F, but I think the Democrats, we could have done a little bit better, for sure.
Why the D to the Republicans and why the C to the Democrats?
Look, I'll start with the Republicans. I'll say that was a really strange speech. I think the president wasn't on his A game. I mean, he's a TV president, right? He's supposed to be on his A game, energetic. He wasn't. He was rambling a little bit. The whole thing looked like almost like an award ceremony. And look, by the way, respectfully to this men and women in uniform who have gotten medals, I applaud them. They should have gotten that, absolutely. But the State of the Union, it's not the place to get that done. I think the president painted not the American dream, he painted the American nightmare, all the killings and the murders. So I just think the whole thing was really strange and not productive for the president. But I think on the Democratic side, I think they should have stood up when they were talking about protecting the American people. I think that was a big mistake. And I think the heckling from Democrats and Republicans have done it in the past too. I think it's a waste of time. I think the American people are looking for solutions. They're not looking for the bickering and back and forth.
So you think they should have stood when he said, stand up if you agree that it is our job to protect American citizens. There was one moment that I actually really admired. Elizabeth Warren was captured standing for one of these economic populist proposals of the president, actually something that you hear progressives talk about a lot, but not really Republicans, which is the ban on congressional stock trading. Let's take a look at that.
As we ensure that all Americans can profit from a rising stock market, let's also ensure that members of Congress cannot corruptly profit from using insider information.
I love this moment because you saw the Democrats actually recognize one of their own proposals, even though it was Donald Trump saying it. Why can't we have more of this kind of bipartisan agreement around the economic populism that Trump has sort of dragged into the Republican Party, despite the fact that Republicans are not really interested in it?
Yeah, you know, I wish the same, and I think I agree with you. I think Elizabeth Warren applauding. I think that's a step in the right direction. I think John Fetterman, by the way, he does a lot of that. He works with the president. I think we need more Democrats like myself, like John Fetterman, who are middle of the road, moderate Democrats who believe that compromise is a good thing for this country. But unfortunately, you know, some of my friends on the Democratic Party that are extreme left or some of the MAGA folks on the extreme right, they just don't serve the country any good. We can do much better as Americans. But I believe we can get that done.
This is why we love having you on. I wanted to get your take on some of the polling coming out of the Hispanic community, because, of course, the midterms are going to be decided by swing voters, by working class voters, of course, overrepresented in the Hispanic community. We have polling here, let's pull that up, that shows that Hispanic voters really are souring on the president. They don't approve of him. You can see here 35% approval rating, 60% disapproval rating, a sharp turn after his big gains in the Hispanic community in 2024, which, by the way, are responsible for his victory. But then when you look at this, I want to show you this polling. You can see here that even though the president is losing support from Hispanic voters, it's not that the Democrats are actually getting that support. You can see here that their share of the Hispanic voter edge has dropped precipitously, and even looking forward to 2026 is still on the decline. And what I think this shows is something that an Axios article laid out really beautifully. They argued that the Latino vote is now crucial to winning elections, but also very fragmented. They argued that the Hispanic community is now the community that has the least party loyalty of any major voting group. I love to see this because I think it gives that community a lot of leverage over voters, a lot of leverage, because now instead of knowing you're definitely going to get this population, politicians actually have to show up and give them what they want. So what is it that Hispanic voters are looking for that they're not getting either from President Trump or from the Democratic Party?
Yeah, and this is what's so fascinating about the Latino community, and we are the wild card, I will say first, because if you ask a Venezuelan American like myself, might be different than a Mexican American, right? I mean, we're all so different of the Latino community, and by 2050, by the way, there will be over 100 million Latinos in the United States of America.
Wow.
That is a big deal. That is a big, powerful voice. So we cannot be ignored. I will tell you on the Republican side, obviously we're conservative in part, but we also we're also compassionate. We want to make sure that when it comes to immigration, a lot of our brothers and sisters might be undocumented. We might know somebody that's undocumented, right? And the way that Donald Trump, even though he secured the border, which, by the way, a majority of Latinos and Americans support, he did a good job with that, but he did a horrible job with internal immigration. The way that ICE is handling this whole ordeal and the deportations, right? The Venezuelan community, the way that they're getting deported back to a country that is so dangerous right now. So those are the type of things that the Latino community are not going to let fly by when it comes to the Republicans. And Democrats, I think we got to come back to center politics, which is we care about you, we see you, we hear you, and we're willing to work with you to make sure that rents go down, that we build more homes in America. So there's a bunch of different things. I think with Democrats, obviously, in the past maybe 4 to 8 years, the whole wokeness, right? That terminology, it's something that Latinos do not share.
Yes, there's a wonderful statistic that only 3% of Latinos identify as Latinx, which I just love. Jose Aristimuño, God bless and protect you. Thank you so much for joining us and for all of this insight.
Thank you so much.
All eyes on the Senate primary in Texas this week, the national implications this race could have for every party. Next. On Tuesday, Texas voters will head to the polls for a Senate primary, among other races. It is a doozy. On both the Democratic side and the Republican side, the race for each party's nominee has gotten fierce. Both sides are fielding bitter intra-party fights. The Democrats are choosing between the more mild-mannered James Tallarico, who believes the Bible dictates Democratic policies like mass migration and abortion rights, and the pugilistic Jasmine Crockett, whose insult comedy routine surrounding the president has rankled many. Tallarico is seen as much more likely to beat a Republican than Crockett, but latest polls show the two opponents dead even. But other polls have Crockett pulling ahead, in some cases by double digits. Meanwhile, on the Republican side, you've got Senator John Cornyn, a four-term incumbent who's viewed as a representative of the Bush-era GOP, and he's facing off against Ken Paxton, who is seen as the MAGA candidate. Paxton is perhaps most well known for trying to help Trump overturn the 2020 election, although he has had a slew of other scandals since, including corruption charges and cheating on his wife. Congressman Wesley Hunt is also running, and President Trump has yet to endorse a candidate. As with the Democrats, Cornyn is viewed as having an easier time beating a Democrat than Paxton, but Paxton right now is favored to win. In other words, primary voters on both sides are potentially poised to pick the less electable of their options, exemplifying what many view as the problem with our politics today. Here with us now is conservative strategist Scottie Nell Hughes and Democratic strategist Corbin Trent. I'm so delighted to have you both here to talk about this. Scottie, let's start with you. Who's going to win on the Republican side?
Well, let me just say this, Batya. As the cliche goes about Texas, Texas always does everything bigger. And the drama in political world, they are definitely living up to their name at this point. You know, here's the bigger issue. I think this is why everybody's watching it, is because they know this is going to be a reflection of how the voters potentially could be come fall when it really, really matters. John Cornyn, God bless him. He's been there since I got out of college, and I'm no spring chicken. He's been there since 2002. A lot of people say we need some new blood in the Senate, and that starts in Texas. But then, like you pointed out, Ken Paxton himself, he's been involved in a lot of different scandals. Donald Trump is there this past week actually campaigning, but not endorsing. He considers all three of them his friends. And he needs, regardless who wins, he's going to need it. Either way, I think we are definitely going to be set up for a runoff, as Texas is a runoff state. So you have to win 50% plus one. And I don't think any of the three candidates are going to be able to do that.
Corbin, I find the Democratic primary so interesting for two reasons. The first is there is a massive racial polarization. So black voters are very heavily lining up behind Jasmine Crockett, whereas white voters and independent voters are lining up behind Tallarico. There's something that just feels to me kind of gross and bad about, having 90% of the black vote behind a candidate that loses, especially in a place like Texas. But also, neither of the candidates is really a progressive, are they? I mean, they're both, when you look at just the policy, pretty moderate. So it seems more like a fight of personalities than of policy. Who do you want to win?
Well, I mean, boy, you just took everything I was going to say away right there. I couldn't. No, I mean, that is the problem in my mind from those two Democratic candidates, is they're both sort of mainstream and even, a little bit right of center of the Democratic Party. I think obviously Crockett's got a different method of speaking, a different way of communicating, which a lot of people find appealing and refreshing. It's sort of akin in a way to the way Donald Trump communicates, I think, with a little more vulgarity, a little more just sort of off the cuff. And yeah, it's, people like to see a politician that doesn't sound like they've, put everything through a pressure tester. So, I think there's a refreshingness to that, but her politics are off. I mean, she's a crypto backer. She's, big in there with the corporate financing. So, I don't think that, to me, politics is about policy and it's about results. And I don't think the results of any of the candidates that we've talked about here are going to be very different than what we've got. So it's, it's a race I'll be excited to watch, see what happens just out of, sheer curiosity, but not one that I'm going to be watching with interest based on any results for the American people. Or Texans,
yeah, I have to say, because of what you just said, I feel very conflicted about someone like Graham Plattner, who's the main candidate, who turned out to have a Nazi tattoo, which I'm very offended by. But at the same time, you do get the feeling that he would shake things up in the Senate in a way that could only be good, given, you look at these people who have been there for just decades. Scotty, you were shaking your head when Corbyn compared Jasmine Crockett with Donald Trump. I'd like to know why.
Let me point out, this is Texas we're talking about. And while, yes, I agree that politics normally is about policy, in Texas it's about personality. And while you might expect that to be Donald Trump might be able to get away with that, I know Texans, and most Texans look at Crockett and go, bless her dear heart. And they say that while they're sipping on their sweet tea. They do believe in a standard of class that comes with the state of Texas and representation. That's why John Cornyn's been able to be reelected. His politics are very unpopular. He hasn't always been with the people of Texas, but the way that he presents himself has always been as a gentleman, even with the people he didn't get along with. And I think that's why he's been able to have such a long career in Texas. Jasmine Crockett, I just don't see the people of Texas, especially the women of Texas, who have such a high standard of how they treat each other.
You think that's race-based or gender-based? I'm just curious. Scotty,
what?
Is that race or gender-based? Why is it that the president of the United States, who has absolutely broken a lot of the molds around politics, he swears all the time, he calls people lots of names. I mean, he does not conduct himself as a gentleman in the normal fashion. There's no disputing that. And he's very popular in Texas. He's very popular with Texas women. So I'm curious, do you think that Texas women would not respond well to Crockett because she's black or because she's a woman?
Well, I love how you're trying to paint me as being sexist and racist. It's just not going to work.
No, I'm asking you what you said about Texas women, not you.
That not going to fly in this court, I'll be honest with you. But let me tell you, what I am painting is Donald Trump's an anomaly. You cannot sit here and compare any other politician in history to Donald Trump and how he's been able to get along with the people. That's what makes Democrats so frustrated. They would like to be able to put him in a box and a definition and say, well, why don't you compare him to others? You can't do it. So don't even try to compare any other politician and the response from the people to how the people have responded to Donald Trump. And I think that is the reason why Donald Trump continues to be popular. That is why all three candidates on the Republican side would love to have his endorsement in Texas. But when it comes to Jasmine Crockett,
so what do you think it is,
definitely no Donald Trump. She definitely doesn't have the appeal of Donald Trump with the wide variety and the diversity.
I'm just curious to what you attribute
Corbyn, can I ask
that?
you something else? I want to ask you something else because I want to ask you about AOC because I do actually feel that she is being judged by a different standard. She had this flub in Munich where she spent 20 seconds looking for the right answer on Taiwan, but she ultimately got there. She said exactly what Donald Trump's position on Taiwan is, which is, strategic ambiguity. She didn't use that word, but she got there, and yet this was hailed as the death of her 2028 ambitions, the death of whatever it is. I thought that was really unfair. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I thought it was a bizarre take on it. It was a very strategically ambiguous answer. I think even the delay in getting to, it showed a probably a lack of preparation for that particular question. But then on her feet, which she thinks well on her feet, what she did was went through iterations in her head and thought, well, this is a pretty big deal. You know, what I say here could be important, could have an impact. And so she took time to say what she thought was the right thing. And she got there, like you said. You know, she's smart as a whip. There's no doubt about that. I've worked with her long enough to know that that's the case. And anybody that underestimates her does so at their own peril.
Yeah, she's smart, she's charismatic, and she's always herself. And I think that in the age of Donald Trump, that is very much what people are looking for. Corbin Trent, Scotty Nell Hughes, God bless and protect you both. That was so fun, for me at least. I hope it was fun for you too. Thank you so much for joining me. Coming up, my thoughts on the Clintons' depositions in the Epstein saga. I'll speak with Gen Z political commentator Link Lauren on whether he believes his generation even cares. That's next. Welcome back to the show. Bill and Hillary Clinton were hauled before a congressional committee to testify about their ties to the disgraced financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. It was the latest attempt on the part of Republicans to take back the political football of the Epstein saga from the Democrats, who have been using it to attack Donald Trump for a year now. Of course, they stole the political football from the right, which had been using it to attack the Clintons and other Democrats known to have associated with Epstein. In retrospect, it's totally obvious that something that deeply and easily politicized was going to be a magnet for conspiratorial garbage, which is exactly what the Epstein list always was. The central claim of the conspiracists, first on the right-wing podcast circuit, then on the left-wing cable news circuit, was that Epstein had been trafficking underage girls to the rich and powerful in order to blackmail them. But millions of documents have been released, and there is zero evidence that anyone not named Jeffrey Epstein ever committed a sexual crime. It's utterly infuriating that they hauled a former president and a former first lady into Congress over such obvious nonsense. This is what Congress is busy with. Give me a break. No wonder the American people have no respect for our politicians. Here with us now is Link Lauren, host of Spot On with Link Lauren and former senior advisor to RFK Jr. Link, thank you so much for joining me. I wanted to have you on to talk about this because I'm really curious. I mean, is Gen Z following this story? Do they know who any of these people are, and do they care?
Well, it's great to be with you, Batya. Something I've studied since about 2023 when the Republican primary was heating up. There's often a lot of daylight between chatter on the internet and issues voters really care about when they go to the ballot box. And so Epstein is a huge conversation on X, on TikTok, on Instagram, at the hair salon, at the grocery store. But when you look at these polls, housing, affordability, the economy, groceries, safety, security, immigration, these are still the top issues. I saw a poll recently, I think 1% of voters say Epstein is their top issue. But if you go on the internet, there's so much chatter. I think what Epstein has become almost this avatar that we project our disdain for the elites onto, right? Like, you've written books about this. There's such disdain for the elite ruling class. We've made Epstein into almost this mythological figure. Of course, he was convicted and did jail time in 2008. Then he was arrested again. He's a total sleazebag. I'm not defending Epstein and saying he's some great guy I want to grab coffee with. But what I'm saying is, I think people project what they want to see onto him a little bit like a Rorschach test, Batya.
That's really well put. You talk a lot about what Gen Z is actually interested in, and it does seem to be a lot more of these economic issues. I found fascinating, we have new polling here, which shows that not only is the nation at large moving to the center from both sides, but actually, as you've pointed out repeatedly, Gen Z itself is the most likely to identify as independent voters. Look at that at 56%. So we have an overall high for the nation identifying as independent voters. And from that overall high, Gen Z is taking the cake. I've noticed this, by the way, when you talk to young people, they'll never say to you, oh yeah, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. It seems almost like embarrassing to say something like that. Explain what we're seeing here.
So what's interesting is I think the Democratic Party has lost their way, right? Look at me. I'm a gay Gen Z TikToker who lived in New York City. I am someone the Democratic Party should have on lock, but I went running and screaming from the hills because their party went so far left. Their party lost their minds. And we saw it at the State of the Union. I mean, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, all of these radicals, this far left minority, they've become the face of the Democratic Party. Well, most Americans We want affordable homes. We don't want private equity coming up and buying up our homes. We want a border that's secure, a border that works. We want these common sense things. And when you look at the Republicans, they are much more on the side of the common sense 7 days a week than the Democrats are. The Democrats are still fighting, look at Gavin Newsom, to keep men and women's sports. They don't know when to let an issue go. And I don't know if it's the lobbying, I don't know if it's the special interest, but I think young people, yes, they're fed up with the two-party system in general, but we saw in the last election, a lot of young people Kamala thought she had on lock didn't vote for her, and she lost every swing state and the popular vote because they said, you know what, President Trump has a vision, he's speaking to us, and at least they're offering solutions for our top concerns.
So do you feel that the president is likely to hold on to the younger voters that he won over in 2024? I mean, we do see some polling suggesting a little bit of a shift away from him. What's your gut telling you?
Well, it's interesting because this is sort of the first midterms I'm going to be covering in depth. I don't know if a lot of Gen Zs and young people are going to be fired up to vote in the midterms anyway, right? So you have seniors, baby boomers, that's your bellwether group that's going to come out in the midterms. I don't know if Gen Z is going to come out and vote in the midterms. I think if they make it compelling, I think President Trump is going to do a sort of Republican convention. I'm sure it's going to be incredible. It's going to have great performance value. But I can't tell you right now if I think Gen Z is going to come out in the midterms. We'll have to see.
And what about patriotism? I mean, we started the show talking about these, hockey Olympian gold medalists bringing back this national wave. We've got 30 seconds left. Link, young people aren't known for their patriotism. Are you seeing a shift there also?
I actually am seeing a shift. I think more and more young people are realizing it's cool to love your country. It's cool to be patriotic. The way things were for 4 years under Joe Biden did not work. We can't go back to that, right? And so the Republican Party, if they're offering a vision and a path forward, which President Trump did in his State of the Union, we're all here for it. And I think the left, they've just become such clowns. Like 70 of them didn't even show up to the State of the Union. Some of them wouldn't stand for the men's hockey team, which is bipartisan. What does the men's hockey team have to do with partisan politics? So the Democrats don't know which battles to pick, and young people are really just fed up with it in general.
Yeah, and I think even in the mainstream media, you see these attempts to rewrite the story that we are all watching with our own eyes because we all have social media. And so you get to the story first, you see the clips first, you see the men's team, and they're out there praising the women and talking about how close they are to them, and the mainstream media is telling you a completely different story. Link Lauren, God bless and protect you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much
Please
for having
come
me.
back
Thank
and
you.
join us again soon.
Thank you so much.
Coming up, unfortunately, we've let Kristen Stewart down, which she says Americans must boycott to protest ICE. You will not believe it. That's next. Friends, we've let Kristen Stewart down. The actress best known for the Twilight series is horrified that illegal alien criminals are being deported, and she has just the right solution.
Where I'm from, I don't identify with that right now. And so I definitely am dying every day thinking, so do we make movies about this? Do we throw all of our money at it? Do we stop buying burgers in the daytime? What do we do about this? I can't fathom that it's happening until it doesn't happen. It's like Los Angeles doesn't exist without all of us.
It's the perfect, never yet thought of solution to every one of our geopolitical problems. Stop buying burgers in the daytime. Who knew that would stop illegal migrants from plowing 18-wheelers into the cars of U.S. citizens and causing brain damage to 5-year-old girls? Who knew that would stop employers from choosing illegal labor over American citizens? Who knew that all you had to do was stop buying burgers in the daytime and the housing shortage, the cost of health care, and the price of an education, currently inflated by 20 million illegal immigrants, would suddenly drop? Kristen Stewart knew it because to unbelievably rich and out-of-touch elites like her, immigrants aren't brutal competition for wages and services. They aren't people who broke our laws to come here. They are part of the scenery, the set design of her privileged life, who make her feel like she's better than you. She's not. She's just richer. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an honor to have you. May God bless and protect you and the United States of America.